Spring came gently to Brighton, a small town tucked between pine-covered hills and a lazy stretch of river. The morning air was crisp but warming quickly, sunlight spilling like honey over the dew-kissed grass of Riverbend Park. It was the kind of morning that made people slow down, breathe deeper, and smile more easily. Riverbend Park buzzed with cheerful activity. It was Community Safety Day, and the centerpiece attraction was the Brighton Police Department's K9 demonstration. Children, wide-eyed and wriggling with excitement, clutched balloons and cones of melting ice cream. Parents stood nearby, chatting with officers and sipping coffee from paper cups. Dogs barked and tugged on leashes, eager for attention or snacks. The scent of popcorn mixed with freshly cut grass and the faint tang of polished leather and fur. At the center of the field stood Officer Megan Shaw, tall and composed in her navy blue uniform, her hand resting lightly on the harness of Ryder, the department's pride. At 5 years old, the German Shepherd was a model of discipline, trained to respond to a dozen languages and over 200 commands. Stories of his precision, loyalty, and near-psychic tracking abilities had become local legend. Ryder sat poised at Megan's side, alert but calm, golden brown eyes scanning the crowd with the patience of a professional. When the crowd hushed, Megan gave the first cue, and Ryder sprang into motion, zigzagging through cones, leaping over low hurdles, and responding to hand gestures with fluid obedience. Children gasped and applauded. Cameras clicked. Parents grinned. Everything was going perfectly, until it wasn't. It happened in a blink. Ryder, mid-stride, froze. His ears pricked forward, nostrils flared. A low growl bubbled from his chest, unlike any sound he had made before. Megan's arm instinctively tightened on the leash. But it was too late. With a sudden lurch, Ryder lunged, not toward the mock suspect, not toward the obstacle course, but toward the crowd. Screams burst from the audience as people stumbled back, clutching children and scattering like startled birds. Ryder charged straight toward a large oak tree on the park's edge, where a middle-aged man sat quietly, legs crossed, reading a newspaper. The man looked up too late. Ryder crashed into him with terrifying force, teeth flashing. The newspaper flew from the man's hands as he fell back, twisting to shield his face. Megan sprinted after the dog, shouting commands. But Ryder wasn't listening. He was locked in. The dog's teeth sank into the man's left forearm, ripping through his sleeve with brutal efficiency. The fabric tore with a sound like paper shredding. Then Ryder stopped. Just like that, fangs bared, eyes locked, but motionless. The man gasped, not from pain, but from shock. The arm exposed beneath the shredded sleeve bore a tattoo, faded, scarred over, but still visible, a black spiral encircling a jagged triangle. Strange lines radiated outward like the rays of a sick sun. Megan reached them and hauled Ryder back, struggling to control his weight and fury. 2 other officers ran up, shouting into radios. The man sat up slowly, cradling his arm, now dotted with blood. His face had gone pale. "Is he okay?" someone shouted. "Call an ambulance." another yelled. But the real questions began when Officer Grant knelt beside the man. Eyes fixed not on the wound, but on the tattoo. His voice dropped low. "Sir, where did you get that mark?" The man didn't answer. He looked up at Megan. Then at Ryder, who was now calm again, panting quietly as if nothing had happened. Then he closed his eyes. "I thought I'd buried that part of my life," he whispered. Megan's expression hardened. She recognized that symbol, not from training manuals, but from a single, heavily redacted file in the archives. A defunct unit. A disavowed operation. She glanced down at Ryder. He hadn't made a mistake. He'd remembered something. Ryder was not just trained to attack threats. He had been conditioned to react to specific markers. Scents. Behaviors. That tattoo had triggered something deep in his memory. Something his trainers might have forgotten, but he had not. The crowd was moved back. Paramedics arrived. The man, now handcuffed loosely, for safety, was loaded into the back of a cruiser. Megan stayed with Ryder, watching as he sat still, his ears twitching occasionally, eyes on the oak tree. "What the hell just happened?" Officer Grant murmured beside her. "I don't know yet," Megan said. But he wasn't wrong. Ryder doesn't make mistakes. She turned to the cruiser where the man sat, head bowed. The sunlight caught his face just long enough to reveal the glint of a scar under his left eye, old, nearly erased by time, but familiar. Too familiar. Megan pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Detective Collins." The voice answered. "This is Officer Shaw. I think we have a ghost from Operation Ashfall." There was a pause. Then the voice on the other end replied, "Carefully. Describe the tattoo." Back in the cruiser, the man finally spoke. "My name is Alan Rourke," he said. "I used to be part of something that went very wrong." He glanced through the window at Ryder. "I was marked, not by choice. We thought we shut it all down. But if that dog recognized it, it means something's still out there. Or someone." Rourke turned to the young officer driving the cruiser. "You need to tell your superiors. You've just scratched the surface. That symbol, that wasn't ink. It was a warning." Back at Riverbend Park, the show had ended early. Families left in a daze, clutching confused children. Volunteers packed up tents and booths with shaky hands. The sky was still bright. The breeze still gentle. But the air felt different now. Charged. Ryder sat beside Megan's cruiser, tail thumping slowly, eyes alert. He wasn't just a show dog. He never had been. And this morning, a quiet spring day in Brighton, had just become the beginning of something far more dangerous than anyone expected. The park had mostly cleared out by late morning, but the echo of chaos still hung thick in the air. Yellowed tape cordoned off the shaded section beneath the old oak tree, and uniformed officers lingered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. The K9 demonstration had ended abruptly, and whispers about the incident spread quickly through Brighton like wildfire. Officer Naomi Brooks stood at the edge of the perimeter, arms crossed over her vest, eyes scanning the tree line. Her jaw was tight, every muscle in her body wired. She had trained Ryder herself, since he was a pup, and she had never, not once, seen him lose control. Except he hadn't lost control. She knew that now. "Let me through," she said quietly to the officer guarding the cruiser. Inside, the man sat still, hands cuffed loosely in front of him. Eyes distant. Naomi opened the door and slid in beside him. Ryder on a leash at her side. The dog didn't growl or lunge this time. He simply sat, ears forward, gaze fixed on the man. "You said your name is Daniel Crane?" Naomi asked, keeping her voice calm but firm. He nodded. "Yes, I'm a retired teacher. I travel around. Came to Brighton 2 days ago. Thought I'd take in the sights. Didn't realize sitting under a tree would earn me a mauling." Naomi didn't respond right away. She pulled out her phone and tapped a few times. Opening a document she had downloaded minutes ago. One she wasn't supposed to have. "You know," she said slowly, "your tattoo matches a police sketch. From an old case." His posture stiffened. "Not much, but enough." Naomi tilted the screen toward him. 11 years ago. Right here in Riverbend Park. A child went missing. Never found. Only witness was his younger sister. She described a strange tattoo on the man who took her brother. This one. Daniel looked at the image. A rough drawing. Done in colored pencil by a trembling child. The triangle. The spiral. The jagged lines like broken sunrays. "I've never seen that before in my life," he said, but his voice was just a shade too rehearsed. Ryder's ears perked. He stood and took a single step forward. Naomi raised her hand slightly. Ryder froze, but didn't look away. "You don't show up in any system," Naomi continued. "No DMV, no tax filings, no employment records, no school registry as a teacher. Not even a social security number. That's not normal, Mr. Crane." He didn't answer. "You picked that name for a reason," Naomi said, "but it's not yours." Silence stretched thick between them. Ryder shifted again. Tail rigid behind him. Naomi leaned in. "Where were you on March 17, 2014? That made him blink. Not flinch, blink. Almost like someone waking up from a dream. "That was a long time ago," he said finally. "I barely remember last week." Naomi's voice dropped. "Ryder does." Crane turned and looked at the dog for the first time. Really looked. His brows drew together. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear. Recognition. "I know that dog," he said, more to himself than to her. Naomi's stomach turned cold. "What did you say?" "I've seen him before," Crane whispered. "Years ago. In a hallway. A basement. Maybe. I don't know where." Naomi's grip tightened on the leash. She knew exactly what basement he was talking about. She had trained Ryder to search in that old facility, before the police turned it into archives. Ryder had been there during the tail end of Operation Ashfall. She hadn't connected the dates until now. Back at the precinct, Naomi pulled every file she could access, and a few she wasn't supposed to. She dug into the missing persons case from 2014, Jordan Lane. Age 7. Disappeared without a trace during a family picnic. Sister MIA Lane. Age 5 at the time. Gave the only lead, the tattoo. A man with a sunburst mark on his arm. She had even said the man talked like a teacher. The file had gone cold fast. No physical evidence. No suspects. No security footage. Just a sketch and a grieving family who eventually moved away. But now, there was Daniel Crane. She ran facial recognition against old drivers' licenses, school staff rosters, even prison records. Nothing matched. Whoever he was, he had erased himself well. Ryder sat beside her desk, unmoving, eyes locked on the interrogation room monitor where Crane sat, expression vacant, not aggressive, not scared, just waiting. Naomi glanced back down at the sketch. What bothered her wasn't just that the tattoo matched. It was that Ryder had responded to it before even seeing it. He had scented something. Something he remembered. Dogs didn't forget smells. If Crane had been anywhere near that crime scene, Ryder would know. And he had. Naomi returned to the room. This time with a tablet and a voice recorder. "Daniel," she said, voice firmer now, "let's talk about the tattoo." Crane didn't look at her. "I don't remember when I got it," he said. "I had a rough few years. Drugs, alcohol, I was lost, got into trouble I don't even remember." Naomi wasn't buying it. That ink was burned over, covered by scar tissue. That's not a bar fight. That's removal, intentional. Still no response. She tried another route. "The child who described your tattoo. She said you smelled like honey and bleach." Crane flinched. "Barely, but it was enough." Naomi pounced. "That's the cleaner we used in the old facility. The one where Ryder was trained during Ashfall. Where you said you saw him." Crane's hands clenched slightly. Ryder stood again, pacing now. "He knows," Naomi said softly. "He doesn't just remember your scent. He remembers what you did." Crane finally looked up. His eyes had changed. No longer fogged, but sharp, cold. "I didn't touch that boy," he said. "I wasn't the one who took him." Naomi leaned in, narrowing her gaze. "But you were there." Crane's jaw tightened. He looked at Ryder again, then slowly nodded. "There were others," he said. "3 of us. They called it a program. Said we were helping, saving kids from worse fates. We didn't ask questions. We were given names, targets. Sometimes we just scared them. Sometimes." He trailed off. Naomi's stomach churned. "Where are they now?" she asked. Crane laughed bitterly. "Gone. All ghosts. You think they'd let me live if I had names?" She stood slowly. "I think they made one mistake." Crane frowned. "What's that?" "They let Ryder remember. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She stayed late at the station, reviewing old surveillance footage from the park archives, trying to piece together anything from the day Jordan Lane disappeared. Then, in one blurred, sun-bleached frame, there it was. A shadow under the oak tree. A man. A newspaper. A faint outline of a triangle on a bare arm. Crane had been there 11 years ago. And now, he was back. Ryder lay curled at her feet. But his eyes were open, watching. Naomi reached down and scratched his ear. "Good boy," she whispered. He thumped his tail once. They had one piece of the past. Now, they had to find the rest. Because whatever Crane had been part of, It wasn't over. Not yet. The wind whispered through the trees as Naomi Brooks stood in the dim glow of her desk lamp, poring over the faded pages of an old case file. The words were brittle with time, written in ink now slightly smeared, the edges of the folder yellowing, but the pain in them was fresh. 2 sisters. Gone without a trace. A school picnic in the woods. A mother's screams that no one could forget. The Hallberg sisters, Leah, 9, and Sophie, 6, disappeared on a cloudy spring afternoon 15 years ago. The case had gone cold within weeks. No suspects, no leads. The only detail that lingered was a strange account from a teacher, a man hanging near the trail entrance, handing out candy, but vanishing before anyone could speak to him. No clear description, just one line. He had a tattoo. I remember because it looked like the sun was broken. Naomi ran her fingers through her hair and tapped the file closed. That made 3 cases, 3 missing children, 3 references to the same symbol, jagged triangle, spiral center, sunburst lines, and now Daniel Crane, or whatever his real name was, sat in a holding cell with that tattoo seared onto his arm. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. The next morning, Naomi drove 2 hours outside Brighton to a small, wooded property near the state border. She didn't wear her uniform, just jeans, a jacket, and a worn baseball cap. She brought Ryder with her. He sat in the passenger seat, watching the forest blur by, silent and still. They were heading to see someone who didn't want to be found. Diana Hallberg had disappeared from public life after her daughters vanished. The press, the scrutiny, the false leads, they had hollowed her out. Naomi had used every contact she could to find a forwarding address. She wasn't sure if the woman would speak, but she had to try. The cabin was small, cedar-sided, tucked into the slope of a moss-covered hill. Naomi parked at the gate and walked the gravel path with Ryder beside her. No movement, no smoke from the chimney. She knocked. No answer. She waited. Then, the door cracked open just an inch. A woman stood behind it, older than the photos in the file. Hair gray, eyes hollow. She looked Naomi up and down. "I'm not giving interviews," she said flatly. "I'm not press." Naomi replied, "I'm police. Brighton PD." That made the woman flinch. Then, she stepped outside and shut the door behind her. Her arms wrapped tightly around her body. Defensive. "You're digging up ghosts," Diana said. "I think one of them is still alive." Naomi said carefully, "And I think you can help me." She pulled out her phone and showed the tattoo sketch. Diana stared at it, and her face went pale. "That's him," she said, "the man from the trail. He was offering candy, had a big bag, like Halloween." Leah said he had a creepy smile. "We didn't think anything of it at the time." Her voice cracked. "I should have. God. I should have stopped it. I saw him talking to the kids." Naomi's voice stayed level. "Was this before or after the school picnic?" "Right after. Everyone was packing up. I was looking for their backpacks." "Did you hear anything strange? Anything the girls said?" Diana wiped her eyes. "Sophie kept saying she saw a dog. A big one." She was excited. said it looked like a police dog, that it followed them into the trees. Naomi's blood turned to ice. Ryder shifted at her side. His ears perked. He had been listening. A police dog. Could it have been Ryder? Was he even active then? No, he'd been barely born. Unless it was training. Or part of something else. Something that blurred the line between exercise and operation. Naomi didn't say goodbye, just thanked Diana and returned to her car. Mind racing. She opened the GPS app and punched in coordinates she'd been holding onto for days. A cabin purchased under the name Jonathan Dale. A known alias tied to Daniel Crane through a burner phone and a P.O. box in a fake town. Ryder hopped into the backseat. He was alert now, focused, like he already knew what they'd find. The cabin stood near the edge of a dry creek, rotting in the quiet, shingles missing, door slightly ajar. The front window was boarded from the inside. No signs of life. Naomi parked 100 yards away and approached on foot. Sidearm holstered. Flashlight out. Ryder took the lead. Tail straight. Nose low. Inside. The place was a mess. Stale food wrappers. Broken furniture. Mold creeping up the walls. But there was something else. A smell. Dust. Age. And faintly. Something chemical. Bleach. Naomi's heart pounded. In the back room. She found it. A trunk. Heavy. Metal clasps rusted shut. She forced it open. Inside were scraps. Papers. Receipts. Old candy wrappers. Photographs burned at the corners. And at the bottom, wrapped in a child's fleece blanket, was a notebook. Small. Spiral-bound. The cover was torn and smudged with what looked like crayon. Naomi opened it slowly. The drawings inside were childish. Stick figures. A big dog with a long tail and pointed ears. Labeled in shaky handwriting. Ryder. Her breath caught. Other drawings showed a house. A forest. A man with a square head and no mouth. One page, torn at the edges, showed two girls holding hands under a tree. In the background, a shadow with a strange mark on its arm. The same tattoo. On the last page. In large block letters. Barely legible. Ryder remembers. Naomi swallowed hard. This wasn't coincidence. The kids had seen something. One of them had drawn it. Hidden it. Somehow it ended up here. In Crane's hideout. Or had he kept it as a trophy? Ryder stepped forward and pressed his nose to the page. His body stiffened. A low growl rumbled in his throat. He remembered. Naomi closed the book carefully and stood. She looked around the cabin, at the emptiness. The rot. But beneath the decay was a trail. The kids had known him. The tattooed man had crossed their path. Ryder had known them. Somehow. He'd crossed it too. And now, years later, the memories were surfacing. Not just in the files. But in the dog trained never to forget. She whispered to Ryder, "You knew them, didn't you?" He looked up, eyes sharp, steady. She opened her phone and started recording. "This is Officer Naomi Brooks. Brighton PD. I am reopening case number 1775H. The disappearance of Leah and Sophie Hallberg. New evidence has surfaced, indicating a connection between Daniel Crane, alias Jonathan Dale, and the missing children. We have a recovered item. A child's notebook. Contains references to an Officer K9. Same dog involved in current investigation. Same tattoo. Same suspect pattern. She turned the notebook to the camera. Ryder remembers. And so will we. Naomi walked out of the cabin and into the light. The past was no longer buried. It was awake. The call came just after midnight. Naomi Brooks had been running on fumes. Hunched over case files and maps at her kitchen table when her phone lit up. Officer Grant's voice crackled through. "We got the warrant. The property's clear for entry." She was already grabbing her gear before he finished the sentence. The old cabin in the woods wasn't just a hideout. It was hiding something. Something they had missed the first time. A freshly sealed basement door. Disguised behind a paneled wall. Ryder had sniffed at it during their last visit. His body language sharp with urgency. But they hadn't had the warrant then. Now, there were no barriers left. Rain slicked the trees as Naomi and the entry team approached the house for the second time. This time, there was no caution tape. No hesitance. The team moved in fast and silent, flashlights cutting through the dark. Boots splashing through mud. Naomi entered last. Ryder at her side. Ears alert. Posture rigid. They cleared the rooms one by one. Living room, empty. Kitchen, decayed. Back bedroom, silent. Then Officer Patel called out. Back wall. Behind the bookshelf. There's something here. Naomi rushed over. Heart pounding. They moved the bookshelf. Behind it, wooden panels. Nailed shut. It didn't take long to pry them loose. Behind the false wall, a narrow stairwell descended into darkness. The air shifted. Ryder growled low in his throat. They went down. The basement reeked of mildew and dust. But under it was something sharper. Naomi wrinkled her nose. Bleach, she muttered. Old. Faint. But it's there. She led the way. The stairwell opened into a short corridor. At the end of it, one door. Metal. Locked from the outside. It took less than 30 seconds to breach it. The door swung open with a groan. What they saw inside stopped them all cold. It was a child's room. Tiny, maybe 10 feet across. The ceiling low. Claustrophobic. There was a bunk bed in one corner. Rusted at the joints but still intact. Dusty sheets. A child's pillow. A wall lined with faded posters, cartoons from another decade. A shelf stacked with old toys. Half-broken. Stuffed animals. Puzzle boxes. Plastic cars. But what hit Naomi hardest was the drawing. It was taped to the wall. Simple crayon lines. A stick figure family. 2 children. A woman. A man. And off to the side, a large dog. Labeled in unsteady hand, Ryder. Ryder stepped into the room cautiously. Sniffing every corner. He let out a soft, confused whine, then paced to the bed and pressed his nose into the mattress. Frozen for a long moment. Naomi watched him, stunned. This wasn't just evidence. This was memory. She glanced to the floor and spotted a strand of blonde hair near the bed's base. Trapped under years of dust. She collected it carefully. "Get the lab ready," she said into her radio. "We need a DNA test." Priority 1. 3 days later, the results came back. The hair was a match. Sophie Hallberg. Missing. Presumed dead. Now, confirmed to have been held in that room. The forensic team had also pulled fingerprints from one of the toys, a wooden train. Partial prints, but enough. They matched Daniel Crane. This time, they had him. The interrogation room was silent except for the hum of the ceiling light and the faint whir of the recording device. Naomi sat across from Crane. Her expression carved in stone. Ryder lay beside her chair. Calm, but with his head raised and eyes locked on the suspect. Crane said nothing for the first 10 minutes. Naomi laid out the photographs. The room, the drawing, the hair. Still, silence. She pushed the DNA report across the table. She was there. Your prints were there. Do you want to explain that? Crane finally raised his head. His face showed no fear, just fatigue. I don't remember that room, he said quietly. You're wasting your time. Ryder stood. No growl, just a shift. A warning. Naomi didn't blink. You remember the candy. You remember the trail. You remember every child's name. Don't lie. Crane smiled faintly. I remember being lied to. Told we were protecting them. Told we were saving them from something worse. Ryder's body tensed. He growled. Naomi leaned in. He knows when you're lying. That's not a metaphor. That's not dramatics. He smells it. The shift in sweat. The hormones. Your guilt. He was trained for truth. Crane looked at the dog. He's just a dog. Ryder barked. Sharp. Sudden. Naomi stood. No, he's the witness. You erased children. But he remembers. And now he's remembering more than ever. She paced slowly. You think we can't put you away with just a dog's instincts? You're right, but the evidence backs him up now. DNA, fingerprints, a room with your ghosts in it. Crane exhaled, leaned back, crossed his arms. Prove I hurt them. Naomi stopped. You kept them. That's all I need. She stepped closer. But I'll tell you what I think. I think Ryder met one of them. I think they trusted him. Drew him. Wrote his name. I think they waited for him to come back. Crane didn't speak. Naomi leaned over the table. And he did. Outside the room, Naomi watched through the glass as Crane sat motionless. But Ryder? He didn't look away from the man for a second. Officer Grant stood beside her. You think he actually remembers all that? Like, more than instinct? Naomi nodded slowly. It's not just training. He connects scent, emotion, pattern. He reacts to deception, to threat, not like a human would, but in his own way. It's memory. It's something deeper. Grant glanced at the dog. So what now? Naomi crossed her arms. Now we comb everything. Every cold case that lines up with the same symbol. The same mo. We don't stop until we know who else was involved. Ryder's been trying to tell us for years. We just didn't know how to listen. She turned back to the window. And now we do. That night, Naomi walked Ryder through Riverbend Park. The crowds were gone, the lights dim, but the old oak still stood. He stopped beneath it, sniffed the air, then sat down and looked up at her. You knew, didn't you? She said quietly. You knew what he was. You never forgot. Ryder rested his head against her leg. Naomi looked toward the sky. The branches stretching overhead like scars against the stars. The case was cracked, but not closed. There were more names, more rooms, more lies. But for the first time in years, they had a real witness. And he remembered everything. The video was only 30 seconds long. Shaky and shot on a phone. But it spread across the internet like wildfire. In the footage, a crowd bustled through Brighton's annual spring market. Families browsed food stalls, children clutched balloons, and musicians played on a makeshift stage. Then chaos erupted. Someone screamed. A man shoved through the crowd. And people scattered as he drew a knife. But before the panic could spiral further, a blur of fur launched into the frame. Ryder, the German shepherd, shot across the street with surgical precision, tackled the man to the ground, and held him until officers arrived. His snarl froze the assailant in place. His restraints stunned onlookers, and when he backed away on command, tail low, ears alert, the crowd erupted into cheers. By nightfall, the clip had been reposted 1 million times. Hero dog saves lives at Brighton Market. Ryder the K9, loyalty in action. But to Naomi Brooks, watching the clip on her laptop in the precinct, it wasn't just another act of bravery. It was proof of who Ryder was. Not just a highly trained K9 officer, but something more, a sentinel, a witness, a survivor, and for one person in particular, it was a signal, a call. The press conference was held 3 days later. A podium had been set up in front of the Brighton Police Department. Officers lined the steps, local news vans crowded the street, and townspeople gathered, holding signs that read, "Thank you, Ryder," and "Our Guardian Hero." Naomi stood off to the side, hand resting on Ryder's harness. He wore his dress collar, polished leather with a silver tag engraved with his badge number. His posture was calm, but Naomi could feel the tension in his body. He always knew when something important was happening. Chief Ramirez stepped up first. "Today we honor not just a dog, but an officer, a protector, a memory that helped reopen 3 unsolved cases and bring closure to families who had nearly given up hope." He turned toward Naomi. But none of this would have been possible without the dedication of Officer Naomi Brooks and the unwavering loyalty of her partner. The crowd applauded. Naomi stepped forward, heart heavy and proud all at once. "Before I say anything," she said into the mic, "there's someone here who asked to speak first." She turned toward the audience. A young woman emerged from the crowd. Mid-20s, slim frame, faint scars on her wrist. Eyes that had seen too much too young. "Sophie Hallberg," Naomi said quietly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in. Sophie approached Ryder slowly. She knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. "It's really you," she whispered. "You were there. You played with me. When it got too quiet, you'd nudge your head into my hands. Lay beside me when I was cold. You made me feel safe." Ryder stepped forward and licked her face once. A soft whine followed, as if something inside him had unlocked. Sophie wrapped her arms around him. The crowd stood in silence. Naomi blinked back tears. This was what they'd been fighting for. Not just justice, but healing. Later that evening, the ceremony resumed inside the precinct hall. Ryder stood beside Naomi as Chief Ramirez pinned a medal to his collar. Medal of Loyalty in Service to Justice. Applause thundered. The room quieted again as Naomi took the podium for one final speech. I've served with Ryder for nearly 5 years. He was bred for obedience, trained for control. But what they don't tell you in manuals is this: dogs don't forget. She looked down at him. They remember pain. They remember safety. They remember kindness. They remember fear. Ryder remembered what no one else could. And in doing so, he gave us a second chance, at truth, at closure, at redemption. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Humans forget. We move on. We push trauma into corners and try to bury the past. But for our four-legged partners, memory lives in their senses. The sound of a voice. The scent of a blanket. The tremble in a lie. Naomi took a breath. We forget, but they remember. Especially the pain, especially the fear, and sometimes, if we're lucky, that memory can lead us back to the light. Ryder looked up at her then. Ears perked, as if understanding every word. Applause broke again, longer this time, rising to a standing ovation. Ryder sat tall, steady, proud. That night, Brighton was quiet. Naomi sat in the grass with Ryder near the old oak tree in Riverbend Park. The place where it all began. The breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying with it laughter from nearby streets, distant music, and the murmur of peace. She scratched behind Ryder's ears. You've done enough for a lifetime, partner. He leaned into her. Stars blinked into view above them. Steady and constant. A whisper of the past. A promise for the future. And beside her, the dog who remembered it all, who never gave up, watched the night in silence. Brighton had its hero, and his name was Ryder.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.